Welcome back, everyone. Today we are diving deep into the topic that everywhere in logistics right now, but still surprisingly misunderstood. We are talking about the new role of the data in logistics in 2026 and what it really takes to turn the visibility into better decisions. And today, to help us unpack it, we joined with Wolfgang Lamarcker, a trusted voice in supply chain strategy and innovation. Thank you for being here, Wolfgang.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so let's move on with our first question and the first topic that I would like to discuss with you. So most of logistics teams have more dashboards than ever right now, and they can see more, but somehow the decisions are often still feel slow, reactive, and sometimes even based on gut instinct. So that is where do logistics teams still confuse data availability with the actually making better decisions? And what are the most common traps you see in 2026?
The challenge lies in the nature of the business. If you look into logistics and supply chain, this is not usually a data-driven activity. It's a problem-solving activities,
Yes.
or problem-solving activity. Meaning you make a plan, you share that plan probably with your next partner, which could be a forwarder, a carrier, and then things sometimes go automatically. So everybody takes care that the agreements are met, which is usually about time and place. So you tell your next actor in the chain, please pick the container up at that location and that day. Please confirm if there's any change in the plan. That's more or less how this works. And
Yes.
that means that's the data set we are dealing with. The next challenge is that if something goes wrong and you see it, you cannot do a lot about it. So you see that your truck is late. So you cannot call the driver and say, drive faster.
Yeah.
Or if it's stuck in a rail car, it's not possible to say, okay, I offload this now and put it onto a truck. So then problem solving kicks in, and people observe the situation and say, okay, if this takes another day, then we have to send a new shipment. And if it's later down in the process, we may arrange for air transport.
Yeah.
What I'm going towards is that the industry depends very much on individuals and their problem-solving capabilities. The second point is that visibility doesn't mean a lot. People thought it means a lot, but in fact, if you look at the visibility providers, the usual suspects, the uptake was not enormous, because visibility with no action, as you said, is not very helpful. It, in fact, increases blood pressure and maybe even pressure from the board if the board has the same visibility. So it might even be counterproductive. So, and now we are at a stage where we are moving from, let's say, tools of visibility and tools of analytics, so we can calculate a new estimated time of arrival, to tools of action. And only tools of action will change the game.
Yeah. I actually really thought about this because and totally agree with the point that you mentioned regarding the visibility doesn't do anything. So you just have this information, and sometimes I believe like even this kind of like lots of dashboards, lots of this visibility, it really some confuse people. It's like sometimes even overwhelm them with the lots of information that they need to take into account, analyze, and that is why sometimes this kind of situations even slow down the process of decision making and like doing this kind of decisions better. Yeah, because you have lots of information and you do not know what is more like the priority, where to move forward. And that is why like action tools, this is something that I believe is more important right now to focus on. Yeah, totally agree. And moving forward, so I wanted to move about the other point. So for example, I hear a lot of information that teams spend a lot of time maintaining the data, and usually that's like lots of data that we just discussed. And sometimes it helps to make decision faster, but not always. And that is why what do you think, what type of data is the least valuable for the decision making, and what let's say uh, data is more valuable for the decision making? Yeah, and what's like the efforts are required to maintain this data? And for example, if you're speaking about the data that is not so helpful, why do organizations still try to keep it?
A lot of good questions.
Yes. You know.
The first thing that comes to my mind is to underline and emphasize the importance of master data.
Yeah, we talked about.
When we install new systems, we spend probably more time on master data to get it right as the basis of success than on training people and install the modules. And that needs to be clear to every decision maker, that we have to invest in the master data. And we have also to help the system, and we have to use such implementations to optimize our master data. So that's definitely time well invested.
Yeah.
Time not so well invested is on, for example, a lot of reporting.
Yeah.
Complex KPIs, complex reports that nobody reads, and everybody knows that nobody reads it. And why we are doing it? Because that is considered the way of doing business. Going back to my previous answer, or the answer to the previous question, in supply chain, or supply chain is very much a frontline business. The person is not helped doing a great job by reporting what has happened.
Yes. It
The
just.
main work should be on how can we do the job better. The third point which comes to my mind is that people often take the wrong angle. They start with the data instead of the problem.
Yeah.
The people get data, and then some other people say, oh, you should now be much better because you have a lot of data. Well invested time is time to understand what the problem is and what data could help to make better decisions. And this brings us again to the actions, because if you have only descriptive data or predictive data, it helps to a certain extent. As I explained before, you can send a new shipment, but it doesn't help with the specific transport. It helps only if you get data on what you could do about it.
Yeah, so that's like really great point, Wolfgang, regarding the part where, for example, you mentioned that the data is usually like descriptive, predictive, but not actionable. Yes, it doesn't help to make exactly the action. So you just see this information. Sometimes even it's not like information that is really up to date, or you just see the problem that, for example, there is a delay, but you cannot do anything about it because it's already the delay and you just need to react on the situation. So that is why that's like the key point here. We are getting back to this important thing regarding the actionable tools and actionable data. Yeah, totally agree with you, Morgan, here. And moving forward about also the data, we still have like better data right now. It's more real time right now comparing to what we have like several years before, and 5 years before, 10 years before. Yeah, but also what's really interesting, it changes power map inside the organizations, because from what we know, sometimes most of the decisions in that earlier years we were requiring to escalate this to some C-level or higher level to make the decisions. And currently, some of the decisions actually could be made on spot. And that is why the question that I have, how is better data changing decision authority inside logistics organizations?
I see three points here. The first is that, and that's not a shift, it's just empowerment. People who are dispatching, organizing transport, planning transport, they get better through data, through tools. In fact, their decision-making quality improves, which should give more comfort to the hierarchy above. The second shift I see is a shift to digital tools. Once you are comfortable with the decisions over a certain period of time, decisions can be delegated to tools, but the tools must be supervised. The responsibility always lies with the person that delegates. So that's the second point. The third is that new roles are emerging. Roles that have been existing over the last decade, but only in very large companies. And I'm thinking of a specific role, in fact, which is the orchestrator.
Yeah.
Because in the past, it was very difficult to oversee multiple, I call them now silos or areas of excellence and expertise. Now with data, people can oversee this. People or teams can oversee even global operations and work then with their local teams on optimizing supply chains and logistics.
Yes,
and that is the real leap forward. And also, as a side product, multimodal transport on a global scale should benefit from this.
Yes, actually, I really like the last point that you mentioned regarding like possibility to oversee, orchestrate, and maintain the data globally, because this is something that I believe was like really hard job for like 10 years ago. It's almost was like impossible to do all this kind of activities. And right now it's much easier. And that is why with this kind of everyday changing situation in the world due to different reasons that we see right now, that is why having this kind of capabilities to see how it influences the situation globally, it really helps to make like better decisions here. And even if for big organizations, especially who function globally, who need to understand what's the overall situation, what's the best route to go, and what's like the best time to go into this direction. So that is why it's something that really helps to make the better decisions. And I really like the point that you mentioned regarding the people even at the warehouses, the dispatchers and all stuff, that they can make decisions also better due to the information that we have. So that is where there, I believe, are less mistakes, so that something is went with the parcel that shouldn't go there in that direction, because sometimes due to lack of the data, lack of information, this kind of mistakes happens. And sometimes even with the load consolidation, it also helps to make deliveries, make the transportation more effective. And that is where they can do this kind of, even I believe, on the spot decisions right there at the warehouse. So that's like real cool. And moving forward to the next question, and the next topic that I have is mostly related to the companies that say we are doing AI. And many companies right now are saying so. But as we mentioned, and that we discussed like in our previous questions and topics, so that the teams actually need action. For example, fewer manual steps, faster exception handling, and decisions that like really quick and stick. Yeah. So that is why what technologies are actually turning logistics data into action today? Because you mentioned about the tools, but I was like really wondering if we can dive deeper into this part as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I can talk about one example. When you are dispatching supported by tools, you can dispatch 30 trucks. Imagine you're dispatching 30 trucks and the day has started and then something happens. Somebody doesn't show up, or a truck breaks down. In the past, this was a major hassle, because what you do is you try to fix this isolated problem.
Yes.
You find a new truck or a subcontractor or any other solution, right? And companies have their preferences. What you can do today is with top of the pack solutions, you can just key in what your constraint is, and within seconds you have an updated planning that is pushed to the 30 drivers and might change 10 tours.
Yeah.
And you have optimized the whole situation. Not always possible, but definitely you have much more to play with by using advanced tools than you had in the past.
Yeah. That's for sure. So actually, this is like really wonderful and great example that helps to understand what's like really actionable data and actionable tools. Because I do remember this kind of situations where, for example, the driver with the truck didn't show up, and this is like the delays that can like hours of the delays, and that is why it shifts all the next dispatchers so that are during the day. And that is once you have this kind of tool that helps to adjust these dispatches, so that is why it's more optimized, so that is why it's much efficient way to work for the warehouses and for these people. So that is why and then of course it brings value to all the next steps that are following after this. So that is why that's like really wonderful example and great point to highlight. And one last topic and question that I wanted to cover today is usually like companies, they want to do the changes, but they cannot overhaul everything at once. So the real question that I have in mind, so if a logistic organization could automate only one data domain in 2026, which should it be to improve decision speed? And for example, what data domain will help to improve this kind of decision-making speed, and what would you automate first inside of this domain?
If we take an end-to-end process, it would be exception management. And what you need for exception management is a data layer. You need a streaming analytics and AI layer. And you need governance. I haven't spoken about governance.
Yeah, actually.
I believe that governance plays a very important role, because even if you see, even if you have a clear picture of what will happen, even if you have good recommendations, but you cannot decide, then you're also not improving.
Yeah, not improving, not doing the necessary actions. Yeah.
Not empowering the people. It is what I hinted to, but I didn't explicitly link this to governance, which means it's a package. You need to have the data. And I hear now, oh, we don't have the data, we don't have this. But people have very often too much data.
Yeah.
And they should work with the data they have. That's one main work stream. And this is looking for problems and then seeing which one can be solved with existing data, and then those that cannot solved with existing data, identify or define the data that is needed and then look for that data.
And regarding like this part, so you also mentioned this in some other topic that we were covering today, because sometimes we have the data and it really helps to make the decisions. But the point with the governance that you enable people to actually make these decisions. And another part is, for example, then you see like the problem and you understand that you do not have the information to make like really great decision on this kind of problem, and then you start to look for this information. And sometimes people, as you mentioned, they just don't focus on this kind of questions, so they just make it on spot without even dipping into the actual problem. Why is it happening and what could be solved there? And that is why this is also the point that we highlighted today, and this is like one of the reasons the data should be exactly solving the issues. Yeah, and you mentioned that the best direction, the best domain to make the automations is like dealing with the exceptions, because this is like the major problem in the logistics space, and that is why you'll not always have the information to deal with this kind of exceptions. And that is why you always keep trying to understand why this exceptions happens and how to avoid them in the future. And that is why you need to deep dive into the problem. And most organizations, people, managers not tend to go in such deep levels to understand everything. Yeah, so that is why this is also, as you mentioned, related to the people and their, let's say, a decision to go deeper into understanding all the issues that may appear during their work. Yeah, so that is why I think that this is like really great point that we discussed today, and the topics that we highlighted, especially on the directions for the data, the governments, the dealing with the exceptions, and what information is really helping to make these fast decisions. And that is why I want to thank you, Folgan, for sharing these insights today. You made something like pretty complex feel more practical and real. And I'm really happy that we had this discussion today. To our listeners, if you found value in this episode, please hit subscribe, leave a quick review, and share this with someone who is trying to make decisions faster without adding more chaos to their process. Until the next time, keep moving forward and stay curious. Thank you.